Um, Module 4, Lecture 3 is going to be on IT sourcing. And let's go through the first module was on strategy, second on architecture, third on payoffs, and the fourth is on governance, of which the third lecture is on third lecture of the fourth module is on sourcing. Now, the key topic or theme that we are going to focus on is to not let outsourcing be irreversible. So let's look at some of the jargon. IT sourcing is essentially where the IT work is done. Is it done inside your firm or outside your firm? Offshoring is outsourcing abroad or using your own people abroad. Community outsourcing is using open source or crowdsourcing or working on an ecosystem with the software available there. Tapered outsourcing is doing the design in-house before handing off to a vendor. Concurrent sourcing is simultaneously insourcing and outsourcing. Backsourcing is bringing back outsourced activities in-house. And the challenges which we are going to look at is that one was the outsourced system doesn't play well with your existing system, or two, you end up with unwanted systems. So let's look at the phenomenon of outsourcing. In the 80s, there was this strategic management thought which talked about core competency, that companies should focus on what is their core competency, where they add value. And this was not a bad strategic thought, but it got many non-technology firms to focus on their core competency, and they decided that developing IT systems was not one of them. And so they looked at the promise of higher quality at lower cost, and they outsourced IT wholesale. However, they are now realizing that everything they make or sell has become so entrenched with IT that executing their core competency is inseparable from a firm's information technology. IT is literally becoming the knitting. The customer experience of the cars produced by automobiles such as General Motors, pacemakers produced by Medtronic, insurance offered by Progressive, the burritos sold by Taco Bell, or streaming services by Netflix are shaped by the software embedded in their products, or the software in which firms embed their business process. Of course, as of today, there is no software in the Taco Bell tacos. But the business process of selling those tacos have software in that. And what firms have found was that outsourcing, because they had not thought of how they were outsourcing, it's turned into a one-way street, and they are now unable to bring it in-house. And so the perpetual challenges in outsourcing are, one is the integration problems, and second is the receiving the wrong system. And so the decisions of whether, how, and where to outsource what kind of IT systems become very critical. And you will see that it's this whole insourcing, outsourcing dichotomy is outdated. There is partnerships which can be built. Now, here are two reasons to outsource. The two reasons to outsource, which seemed very innocuous, can actually long-term create some problems. First reason to outsource was to access IT skills which were absent in-house, and a vendor was cheaper than doing it in-house. And these were not bad reasons to actually outsource, but kind of a deeper thought actually created some problems and could have anticipated some of the problems. So let's look at three unstrategic IT sourcing decisions. Where are your IT assets developed and maintained? So here are three routine non-strategic activities that merely demand competent IT. The first one is business process outsourcing enabled by IT, customer support, call centers, remote working, crowdsourcing. And the consequence of IT use is these are the consequence of IT use rather than the production of IT assets themselves. Um, these are outside the purview of strategic IT sourcing decisions. Commodity IT infrastructure and services. Commodity infrastructure implementation IT services such as internet connectivity are routinely outsourced, and thinking about doing them out in-house is silly. It's like creating your own building your own generators to build electricity instead of buying it from a local utility companies. All IT hardware purchases, operating systems, network gear fall under IT infrastructure. And the last one is commodity software. Commoditized software packages, whether inexpensive spreadsheets or a multi-million dollar ERP system that you purchase in the market, are outside the realm of IT sourcing decisions. That you purchase in the market, irrespective of whether you buy software and install it on-premise software, rent it over the internet as cloud sourcing, coordinate with its sellers, negotiating pricing, service levels, managing contracts, are your IT unit's responsibilities. All of these are routine, non-strategic IT management activities that merely demands competent employees in your IT unit. The IT sourcing decisions that require non-IT managers' contribution therefore exclude the sourcing of work which is enabled by IT infrastructure and services and commodity service products, right? So here is where we are looking at non-IT managers' involvement. This could be in software embedded in your firm's product or service, custom-built apps in which your business processes are baked in, and some of them are one-off, non-recurring IT tasks. All three are primarily IT activities involving custom IT apps, and that's what we focus on in this chapter. So let's look at insourcing versus outsourcing. Insourcing is the practice of using your own employees to accomplish IT activities, and outsourcing is the practice of using outsiders. And there are some advantages and disadvantages. So insourcing, in-house IT people have there's an alignment of interest between the line managers and the IT. It also retains IT expertise in-house, which gives you greater control, and it makes it very difficult for your competitors to imitate what you're doing. However, your firm might not have the skill sets of needed IT skill sets, and your outside firm could potentially do this at lower cost. Now remember, the word is potential. Okay. Outsourcing, here are some advantages. You access skills absent in-house, so you get a wider range of skill sets. It could be cheaper for intermittent IT work, but the disadvantage is these are not your employees ever, and so you lose control. And third is it's disconnected from your business needs. So here is multiple choices available to sourcing information technologies. The first choice we looked at is insourcing versus outsourcing. And when you insource, you can look at your own in-house IT unit or something called a captive center, which is commonly located in a foreign country, typically to access a talent pool unavailable at the same cost domestically, or localize IT activities to foreign markets where it has significant presence. All major firms like Boeing, Microsoft, Apple, Google have captive centers in India, Canada, Europe for both reasons. Second type of captive center is essential. So we talked about the foreign, but we could have it in a rural domestic area where IT talent is readily available and costs are lower, rural sourcing. So many American firms operate captive centers in university towns with major research universities throughout the Midwest like Iowa. Although skills available through rural sourcing, largely part-time student workers, might be inferior to captive centers, foreign captive centers, the commonality of culture and accents make them attractive for IT work that requires interacting with customers. Um, so on the right, we talk about outsourcing, and let's look at the different kinds of outsourcing. Um, and concurrent sourcing is when you have both insourcing and outsourcing. Um, so your outsourced could be to a domestic firm, could be offshore, and could be community sourcing. And offshore is similar to an insourcing with a captive center here. So it's basically out of sight, and you have that option there. The problem with offshoring is you have language barriers, there are some legal issues and contractual enforcement, and of course you've got to take into account currency fluctuations. So here we have, when you look at domestic firms, you can have multiple sources to multiple IT vendors. You can have cloud sourcing, where it's delivered entirely through the internet. But cloud sourcing, you really can't make strategic differentiation because anybody can access that. Similarly, even you can have domestic firms with cloud source, or you have offshore accounts that cloud source. You could look at what we call as tapered sourcing. So this is done a lot in Japan, and what they do is they do half the work and then they hand it off to the vendor. So and this way they retain a good bit of control over the project. With community sourcing is there are open source communities for our online communities that share their software code they develop. You can freely modify most of the open source code, use it for business, with one requirement: you must share your code back. And the quality of open source matches commercial rivals. However, you have to give it back, which makes it harder. So most commercial grade open source software follow the Gillette's free razor but expensive blade model. Software itself is free, but you pay an outside firm to integrate it with your firm's existing IT, provide maintenance support. And then there is crowdsourcing, where a firm enlists a paid or unpaid group of customers, and the scope of crowdsourcing IT work is limited to online customer support message boards, where they help each other technical problem, or data cleaning, where customers tag photos on Google Maps, and beta testing of software before public releases. Sometimes the firms do run tournaments for some interesting technical problems. Netflix, for example, had a Netflix bounty of $1 million as a winner of more than 2,000 teams who improved their movie matching algorithms. It's difficult to scale this. And the third approach is using ecosystems of smaller partner firms. It's promising. This is not really taken off too much. Here, the firms let outsiders build software extensions around its own IT systems with an agreement to split the revenue they generate. Most visible examples of 1,000 small applications that third-party vendors build mobile consumer platforms like iOS or Android. These are the most successful ones. Less visible corporate parallels are where outsiders can produce novel extensions to build hooks around the firm's IT systems. I think right now we've had Nike, Walgreens, 23andMe, National Public Radio, and the federal government are using this, building ecosystems and opening it up. Um, and we haven't talked about following the sun model, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So here are, given that we talked about the multiple kinds of sourcing, and we'll address some of the issues there, we're going to look at two perpetual problems make it harder to realize business value from outsourced IT projects, even if you have a good IT vendor working with diligent staff from your IT unit. The first one is an integration problem. That is, the pieces don't fit together. And second is receiving the wrong system. So integration problem arises when a delivered project works fine by itself but does not play well with other IT assets in your firm. Outsourced system must often use data produced by other apps and send data to them. This requires the vendor to understand data sources and interfaces of other IT systems in your firm's IT portfolio, with which the outsourced system must eventually interoperate. Among such assets, custom-built applications are particularly hard for outsiders to comprehend. You could rarely transplant an app custom-built outside your firm to plug and play with your patchwork of proprietary in-house, which often spans generations. So you might have an older system or running on a mainframe, and so integrating a delivery system therefore adds considerable costs beyond development costs paid to an outside vendor. So actual costs can actually wipe out your potential savings from outsourcing. So you must therefore compare outsourcing to insourcing using total cost, not just software development costs. The next one is receiving the wrong system. We talked about the latent need requirements in the last chapter on project management, and this creates a volatile requirement. Outsourcing adds an extra translator layer between users and vendors. So the business IT gap, business users to IT gap, is hard enough within your company. And now you have an outsourced vendor, and it's just not, the cultural barrier is just not because it's in a different country. Even if you have a domestic vendor, different companies have different cultures. And so you might end up getting what your IT unit asks for, but not what you need as a line manager. So you're creating another layer between the line manager, then your IT unit, and then your vendor. So let's look at two strategies to lower our integration costs. The first one is called concurrent sourcing, simultaneously insourcing and outsourcing the same sort of IT work. This prevents outsourcing from being irreversible, helps write better contracts and better specification because your IT unit actually knows what the vendor is doing, and fosters a healthy competition between in-house IT and vendors. You can kind of even say IT in-house does 10% of the work and 90% goes to the vendors. And doing this retains mission critical IT skills in-house, which excessive IT sourcing can otherwise erode. If you're not careful, excessive IT outsourcing can hollow out your firm's in-house technical capabilities in time. There might not be enough in-house talent left to understand your own IT portfolio, which potentially locks you into your IT vendor. It's like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never leave. Concurrent IT sourcing, by maintaining in-house skills, prevents IT outsourcing from becoming an irreversible decision. Doing the job in-house allows your IT unit to understand it well enough to communicate with an IT outsider. Easing the integration of outsourced works helps you write better outsourcing contract specifications that lower integration costs. In the long run, concurrent IT sourcing keeps alive the option of bringing back sourcing, which is bringing out outsourced activities back. Concurrent outsourcing can simultaneously improve performance of both your in-house IT units and outsourced vendors also. The verify and then trust approach is a Japanese style screening using dummy projects. Here, select the vendors, verify the quality of their work, and leading Japanese firms do this. Toshiba, for example, injected ambiguity and integrated problems into a completed project that it then simultaneously outsourced to 3 competing vendors. It did this just to verify how they dealt with integration projects, ambiguities, and how their finished code compared to their own engineer's code. Toshiba did all this to decide who gets the real larger project that it wanted to outsource. It added the winner to its exclusive circle of trusted IT vendors that it now exclusively outsources. So the second challenge was receiving the wrong system. And here are 2 strategies to avoid when receiving the wrong system. First is tapered outsourcing. And let's look at an example of tapered outsourcing. So normal process, you gather requirements, design it, code it, and then test it, and then roll it out, right? Most companies in the United States, they kind of hand it to the IT vendor right here at gathering requirements. The Japanese method, actually, they do the gathering of the requirements in-house, they design it in-house, and then only hand it over for coding, testing, and rolling out to the vendor. And so this delays outsourcing. You have control over design, overcomes language and cultural barriers, and your IT unit knows your company's business value a lot better than your vendor. So this helps you not get the wrong system. This is like you are the architect, you create the blueprints, and then you hand it over to the contractor to build it, and it's immune to misinterpretation. Of course, this demands business savvy in-house IT design skills. Your IT shop must be very good here to do this. And the second strategy is to structure flexibility into project contracts when you cannot pin down project contracts. You can structure IT outsourcing contracts as fixed price contracts that pay the vendor a lump sum for completing a project, which is predictable, inflexible, and in the beginning this seems good because you know exactly what you're paying out, but you may not get what you want. But a time and materials contract that pay vendors for hours of labor actually used to complete a product. This is more flexible, allows you to expand the scope of your project, but of course there is greater cost variability here. So the time and material contracts are better when project requirements are ambiguous. When it's a clear-cut project, everything you know, fixed contracts are better.